like to open the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners. It's the 7th of January. Joanne, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Ernst?
Here.
Commissioner Engel?
Here.
Commissioner Rollins?
Here.
Commissioner Vogelsong? Here. Commissioner West? Here.
Commissioners, under change to the agenda, I would like to recommend to move the update on Boca National to make that item number 2 rather than item number 5. If that's acceptable to you. I think that's what we, unless everybody's here to hear about the use of jumbo limbo ocean spring. So we'll do that. At this time on the agenda is an opportunity for the public to ask questions of the district. We would like to answer everybody's questions if possible, but if there's things that we cannot answer under the golf course discussion, in the past we've allowed discussion and questions of the architect, but to ensure a timely meeting, we're going to ask that if you have questions after the architect has made a presentation, Brianne will hand out some business cards and you can email the district on that. We'll get those answers for you. We weren't quite expecting this much interest. In the future, we know when we have a discussion, we'll go to the theater where we have more room to make clear everything. At this moment, the next item is the approval of minutes of a previous board meeting. I'm sorry, we're right by. Public request, thank you, Sue. That's the reason why we're changing chairman to keep me on. At this time is an opportunity for the public to address the commission. If you would, come forward, give yourself approximately 3 minutes, and the floor is now open. Please state your name and address for the record.
Steve Finver, 485 George's Way. I'm the president of Buffy Test Lacrosse. I want to thank everyone for coming out to speak, hear me tonight. You know, I draw such a big crowd, I would have snacks. I'd like to address the board to express my sincere thanks for finally awarding the contract to go forward in installing the artificial turf on the 3 rectangles of Patriot Park. It's been a long, tiresome project we've all been working on, and we're all very excited. I'm excited to see it finally take place. I know I speak for all the residents of Boca that use the park, that this will make Patriot Park more of a model park than it is already. It's going to be an absolutely stunning place for kids to come out and play. It'll have more playability without concerns of rain, and it'll be fabulous for all sports. I know there was some pushback regarding the project, saying why does it need to be now? The field's playable, they are playable. Well, playable is a relative term, and I think that you all came to the right decision on approving this and getting the contract to move forward, and that's awesome. I want to thank Chairman Rollins for all the years of his help with this and getting this moved forward. I want to thank Aaron for making the motion, for making this move forward, and to all the commissioners who have voted for it. We appreciate that, and I speak not only for Boca Jets Lacrosse, but I speak for the athletic community in Boca. You all should be very proud of it, and we're looking very much forward to playing on it next season. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? The floor is now open. Just come forward, state your name and address for the record. Let's give Mr. McCabe's address from memory.
Hello, Robert Duque, 5351 Northwest 3rd Terrace. I want to thank all the commissioners for your support and listening to the residents and moving the clubhouse location from the north west corner of the property over to the southeast for traffic considerations. I think that will certainly enhance that possibility. Also, since you determined that you're going to have the driving range over in that area, I think that will be very good and convenient for people to be able to go right there, go to the driving range, and have the clubhouse right there in the southeast corner. I know that there's a lot more to be talked about as far as the design of the golf course, the cost. I know National Golf Foundation recommended approximately $70 for in-season golf rates for residents, possibly 100 or more for guests of residents
guys were discussing regarding having a park somewhere on one of the corners. I just wasn't sure if that was still in play. Ideally, I would love that. I know my older daughter, I'm gonna have her participating whatever in whatever classes there are for the golf academy and stuff like that. And I have a little young one that when I put her into class, I'm hoping to kill some time at the playground or something like that with the little one. So I was hoping that I could maybe be at one of the corners of the golf course for the little ones. Thank you.
I'm Harold Chappie, 6200 Northwest 2nd Avenue, president of T Golf and Boat. The last meeting, I was very happy to see that you moved the clubhouse over to the east side. There's a couple of things I was thinking about. We're going to put the, I guess, the work facility, repair facility behind the
Maintenance building.
the maintenance building behind the clubhouse. I don't think that's a really good place for it.
Harold, I don't think we were talking about putting it behind the clubhouse.
It would be down by the railroad tracks.
Back by the railroad tracks.
Yeah, I think that basically, we had discussed something with Condo 9. The Condo 9 still was looking to maybe lease the land that's behind their condo. And they accepted that in the beginning. I think that that's a much better place for it. Because even from the clubhouse, you can still see the buildings behind it. How are you gonna hide the big bushes? I mean, the land is not that wide, it's narrow. I thought that would be a better place, if you consider that. And also on the other two pieces of property, I talked about, there's a name for it, you talked about, where kids can come and they can play and they can putt, you know, and they can.
Putting course.
Like a putting course, but you called it something else, it's a different golf course, we went to see it, and I don't remember the name of it. I thought that would be an ideal corner for it. The cradle, right, the cradle, sorry.
The little short course that we had on the northeast side of the project is what we were talking
Yes,
about.
but you can move that over with the restaurant, which would be a perfect location for it. It'd be green, pristine, you know, really pretty. Very important, those four corners.
I'm not sure if that's planned, but thank you for your.
I thought it was a great idea. To bring youth.
Yeah, helping you.
Thank you, Tammy.
Anyone else? Okay, I guess we'll move into the most important part of this for me. We'll do minutes, I'm so anxious here. The commissioners have privileged minutes from our regular meeting held December 17th, please.
Move to approve?
Second. Point of order, I missed the last hour of the last meeting, am I permitted to vote?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
If so, recorded, Steve, so any changes, amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passed unanimously. First order of regular business, and I must say that, before we get into this, is that I appreciate the opportunity in the last 3 years to serve as chairman. It's been something I've loved doing, and in working with Mr. Koski and Wayne on some of our projects, Swim and Racket. It's been a really good experience, and I know that the next chairman who will take up the mantle will have the same opportunities I had and to help move this district along. I've just finished, I think, my 24 years on the district, and I start my next 4 years, and I'm getting younger instead of older. But it's been a real pleasure serving the community in this capacity, and thank you for the support from all the commissioners. Thank you very much. At this point of the regular business, first item, of course, is the election of officers. And as the chairperson, I'd like to take the prerogative, Jacob, if it's permissible to make a motion, make a nomination rather, and I would like to nominate Susan Vogelsang to succeed me as chairperson of the Greater Boulder County Beach and Park District.
I second the nomination.
And then moved and seconded. Any other nominations to be put forward? Hearing none, if someone asks that nominations be closed.
I move the nomination to close.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Commissioner Vogelsang, we'll welcome you as the new chairperson of the Greater Boca Raton Beach and Park District. as the vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Aaron Wright as vice chair.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further questions, any further nominations?
Close the nominations.
Okay, nominations are closed. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passed unanimously. Congratulations, Aaron. And the final and most important, secretary treasurer.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Ernst. for,
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further nominations? Yeah, somebody will accept that, Commissioner Ernst.
Move nominations be closed.
Closing the nominations and approving the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passed unanimously. Congratulations, Sue. You're welcome to take my chair.
Yeah, the one without the list. Okay, we've moved the second order of business to the update for the Boca National Golf Club, and Mr. Wayne Branthwaite is here. Wayne, would you come to the podium, please? I've had the privilege of meeting with Wayne very frequently, and he is a wealth of wonderful information, and I'm so glad that we have these fine people on our team.
Free soda, free coffee, and free water. After the tax, you'll owe an extra 50 cents.
Good evening, commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks. I don't need to use the microphone now. Everybody can hear me? Okay. So the golf course, I think there's a lot of new faces here that I see. And for those who haven't been with us until the cold hit up north, the golf course is moving along really well in terms of the golf course design. For those that haven't been with us, we've got two streams for the project right now. One stream is the golf course, and the other are all the buildings and the infrastructure, like the tunnel, that kind of thing. So the clubhouse and all the other buildings are going to move behind the golf course, because that can go a lot quicker. The permitting process for that is a lot shorter, and so that's well underway. We've got about 65–66% of the golf course design laid out pretty much where we want it, and so we're probably in about another 2 weeks we should have that complete, and that allows us then to give that information to the engineer. The engineer does a lot of the drainage, signs off on the drainage, and then it goes to permitting. Permitting is an approximate 5 month process. So at the same time, we're about to begin the process of looking at contractors for the golf course, so that probably by June, July, August, we'll be ready to go to construction with the golf course. That's the plan right now. So nothing's impeding the golf course. Everything's full steam ahead as quickly as we can do it. At the same time, while the golf course is going on, we've actually completed a lot of tasks at this point. We've done a boundary and topo survey, which is finished. The tree survey is done. The environmental assessment is done, and there's no obstacles from that. We've had the National Golf Foundation do several studies for us. Those are both done. One confirms that what we're doing, we're going down the right path, that it'll be a profitable venture. The other that they've done is a clubhouse, a study on the clubhouse, and they've helped us with that. We've also had a hotel feasibility done. So all of those things, including a geotechnical. Oops. Got too close.
Much better way. Oh, that's good.
That's fine. Everybody can read it. So the engineering investigation. Sorry?
Can you speak up so the rest of us outside the room can hear?
Boy, I'll do my best. The engineering investigation, which has defined for us a lot of what exists under the ground. Just remember, this is a piece of property that's been developed in the early 60s, or late 60s, I think. And so there's not a lot of information that exists in the city offices or in any business offices. There's just nothing around at this point. So we continue to work on the engineering investigation. We're actually further along than the 40% that's shown there now. And that task will continue for quite a few months as we get through the conceptual design phase of the golf course, as well as the other buildings and infrastructure that we're doing. So building concepts, we've just started with that in terms of the clubhouse and those buildings. We're still looking at that information. We're trying to figure out a lot of things at this time, and so we don't have anything to present to you just yet, but we are continuing to see or just to look at those things and decide what works the best before we ultimately present that to you. Once this first section is called the conceptual design, so where we get everything designed conceptually, the district signs off on it, and then the next step is we go to detailed design. We've already done that with the golf course several months ago. All that remains now is the buildings to be approved, presented, approved, and then they will go to design and development. So going to the next phase of the project, the design, development, permitting. As I say, golf course design. We've got two areas designed. 2-month study, a 2-month process for the engineer to sign off on a drainage plan, and then another 5 months for permitting. Don't worry, I can read it. Okay. So as I said, the next phase for the golf course is for us to create an RFP, I guess, the district to create an RFP or an RFQ process so that we can begin to identify contractors to build this golf course going forward. We have a 6 or 7 month lead time before we actually need to begin construction. So this will give us enough time to get going now and get a good look at who's out there and what kind of pricing we can get. Northwest 2nd Avenue tunnel. We actually had a meeting today. We've just added McNamara Salvia structural engineers to our team. And so we've had the first meeting today, and that process will continue as we begin to uncover more information and make some decisions about how we intend to present our findings to you at a later date. And that's pretty much it. I think the rest is, I've given all the commissioners an understanding of where we are in terms of costs with permitting, with the consultants in phase 1, and then what's expected potentially in phase to. And that's where we are. Now, I will say that, you know, in the last couple of weeks, I've had some questions about the golf course. And so I thought maybe this is an ideal opportunity to just go over some of the things that we said originally in our RFP presentation here. I think the most important thing that we'd like you all to understand is that we're not designing Augusta National. We are not designing something for ourselves. We're designing this golf course for the people of Boca Raton. And typically what that is, you know, your handicap, probably your average handicap is probably in the 18 to 26 range. So that's the golf course that we are designing for here. We have no intent in creating forced carries, deep bunkers, pot bunkers, unnecessarily undulating greens. You know, we'll provide sufficient tees so that there's a place for everybody to play. And so, you know, I think it's important that you know that what we're doing here, we're not doing for ourselves. It's for people that we understand are going to play this golf course. We don't have an idea of a tournament in mind here or anything like that. It's for the people that are going to be out there playing golf day in and day out. So I hope that puts a lot of any anxiousness to rest, and that you know what direction that we're going at this point.
Thank you, Wayne.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. We will, anybody who has questions for Wayne, please take a card and send the questions through the district email, and we will make sure that he gets
Excuse me,
them.
are you, with very difficulty here, but I do have a question. Are you opening it up for questions?
No, we are not. We said that at the beginning of the meeting, that we would have, since there are so many people, and in the hope to keep the time limit down, you'll submit your question to the district email, and this is being passed out right now. But we do thank you for coming.
It's not a question about the golf course.
We'll
I mean, have you seen the amount of interest here? There's so many people out there in a hall who can't really hear anything. Might want to say something or offer a suggestion. Is there a possibility that future meetings be held in a larger venue?
We will do that.
Yeah, for those of you just here, I know I see some new faces that Wayne has mentioned that also, is that we've had at least 5 public hearings on this project where questions and answers were, that was specifically for that purpose, was to get questions and answers. So, and we had not anticipated, you know, this would draw this kind of activity this evening, or we would have moved it over to the theater, which is where we've had all of our public hearings. So in the future, we've learned our lesson. We put that on the agenda, and we'll try to accommodate more space.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to the third item, which is Patry Park tennis programming. And our executive director has a report.
Commissioners, at our previous meeting, we were asked to investigate some anonymous letters that came to some board members.
Did you see the 3 pages or the 3 options?
here, who's our tennis center manager for the city, as well as Tiffany Lucia, who's the rec center superintendent. We've looked into some of the complaints that were cited in the anonymous letter. We unfortunately we don't have anybody to ask about specifics of their complaints, so we did the best we could. Melissa talked quite a bit with Leslie, and the contract with this tennis pro is on par with the other contracts that have been signed by the tennis center. It's a higher level program that's going to offer something different for the participants at Patchogue. As far as the specifics of it interfering with different things that are happening there, that hasn't happened yet. And obviously, if it does, I think staff has a plan to make sure that current residents and members aren't impacted by this new program. And they are here to answer any of your additional questions.
How will you handle that, Leslie? If the teaching pro is out there and the members come and they want to play and they have to call ahead of time?
Well, that's, even if we don't have a teaching pro out there, a lot of times if people don't call ahead of time, they don't get reports anyway, because there's other people that do reserve reports. Most of the time at this academy, or we call it a tennis school, is going to use the dead time early in the morning, starting at like 11, 12 o'clock till 6 o'clock. We have a lot of dead time. We have our junior program out there. So they're using the courts the majority of the time when we wouldn't have anybody there. We used to have FAU college over there, and they took up all our courts in the afternoon, so this is kind of replacing that.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for our staff?
Yeah, I do. Chairman. What was the incubation of this academy? How did this come to be? Was there an RFP to select someone? I mean, how did this initiative begin? Because it concerns me as a commissioner on a project where we had begun looking at an academy there, and probably the same person that wrote the most recent letters is the same person that complained about the issue. Perhaps it was over a concern for the loss of their position at the center. And when you put forth a name like an academy, that causes me some concern, because we got a lot of rejection from that when we were trying to look at doing the same thing. So my question is basically, why did this issue come up? Where you felt the need to explore that possibility? How did you select this individual? And does this person know that there's a possibility that these courts could be shut down because of safety reasons?
So, so this process and how we was brought on board it's how we do business. It's how we've done business in the 20 years that I've been here in the city. When someone wants to teach a program, whether it be at a tennis center or a community center, usually one of two things happens. They come in, they fill out an application, or they submit a proposal to do a program. And that is in essence how we program, unless we're using our own staff to do stuff, which we do have at the tennis centers and we do have at some of our facilities. That's how we program our facilities. We're approached by a prospective vendor through either an application or a proposal. So in this case, as in pretty much every other case that I'm familiar with, a proposal was submitted. We then will determine, is this the kind of program we want to have? Now I can tell you just from what Leslie has shared with me and what I've observed over the years, and as a former avid tennis player, it is pretty customary for your courts to be empty early in the morning up till about 9 o'clock, and then in the afternoon. We're always looking to fill our facilities to capacity, whether it be a community center room or tennis courts. We want our facilities and our amenities being used on a regular basis. So having junior programming to fill those gaps is something that we've actually been doing for years. They haven't been as successful as we had liked, but we've been doing this and similar programming. Tennis, what do you call them, junior academies, if you want to call them tennis schools. We've been doing this for years. I just think the timing of it and with the name, it has maybe brought some attention to it. But to further answer your question, this gentleman went through the typical process. We then look to see, do we have availability? Does it fit what we're trying to accomplish here? We'll then review with a prospective vendor if he or she can meet our way of doing business, because we do have policies and protocols and rules, if you will, in place as to how we conduct business in the city. If all that works out and we feel like, yes, this is the type of program we want, which we've been pursuing for years anyways, and they can meet our requirements, we'll then go through a vetting process with the vendor, which we do with every vendor, and that is reference checks and a background check. He has gone through all of that stuff. So that's how that's why we're here. That's why he's been
to it, and B, we would have been informed about this before it came to be. And, you know, I'm just sorry that, that a lot of these activities, you know, because it is our facility, the Sugar Sand Park Community Center, Ash Reef, these are things that we need to know about, because we've had this discussion before when Commissioner Starkoff was on the committee as to the functionality and the profitability of some of the programming elements that we had. We never really got our arms around it. And as far as the, you know, the community goes in using the facilities, the taxpayers are paying for those courts, whether they're sitting empty or not. I'd like to get some revenue from them but I don't want to impact their ability to come out there on a moment's notice and play tennis.
That's understood,
Okay.
and that is a priority. Right, and just so you all are aware, every person that's a part of this program will be a member of Patch Reef Park. They will have a membership.
And
That is
90%
requirement.
of our residents.
Right, so, of Palm Beach County, so they are residents. But as far as, this is just how we typically do business, so it didn't ring any alarm bells to any of us. So that's probably why we didn't bring it forth. This is how we do business in the city. People come to us, they fill out an application, they submit a proposal. We, as experts in our field, determine if this is a program that's feasible and is appropriate for the venue, and that's what we've done. So that's probably why it didn't ring alarm bells for us, because it's just how we've done business for as long as I've been here.
Do they get like a certain number of courts that they get to use?
Yes, I kind of.
Like designated for them for certain time slots?
Correct.
Okay.
And he has been made aware that if at any time we need courts for public use, for members to come and play, to play recreational tennis, those courts go to the members to play recreational tennis. And here's the thing, it's an agreement. That, if things do not work out, any one of the parties, us or the vendor, can end that agreement at any time.
Mhm.
So that's, you know.
And is it in terms of fees for this particular tennis academy, is it on par with city fees? Is it much higher?
It is a little higher because of what they're getting for it. We've done this in the past. We've had academies. There's different kind of academies. We've had academies in the past. We could just never draw like the higher level kids, which draws more kids. You know, it's like a domino effect. So we've had these in the past. They just weren't successful. The person running them ended up leaving. We tried to put somebody else in there, and it just never worked. So we have the opportunity to try it again. We're hoping it will be successful, because it really is for the community. It's not for kids flying from all over the place
So these
coming,
aren't
staying
like
at.
international players coming
No,
to play?
most of them live here, you know. And it's been an audience we've not been able to serve, so they're going to other cities to do this. And if we can keep it here and keep our residents here coming to our facility to get a higher level of play, that makes sense to us.
Are there conditions in this agreement, and I didn't see any, that when we have to close, if we have to close for maintenance or the painting or the resurfacing, is this person, is Mr. Rodriguez aware of that? That's something that you have.
I've discussed that with for all my tennis pros. Every single one of my tennis pros has an agreement. I mean, they're gonna be hurt by that too. I mean, it's just gonna be something maybe we could accommodate them at one of the other tennis centers, or I'm not really sure what we're gonna do, but he is aware of it.
The other question I had, and it took a little further reading of this contract, where it mentioned that the city was purchasing the insurance for this vendor. And isn't that a little unusual?
That's standard practice for our recreation programs.
Well, it's unusual in the insurance industry that I work in.
Oh.
That's responsible.
The city takes out a policy for our recreation programs.
And I noted eventually in the paragraph below that, a couple, they mentioned that the district would be named as an additional insured. And that indemnification agreement that this contractor is making has got to be sure that it's indemnifying the district along with the city.
Understood, correct.
Are there any of the teaching pros that you have now that are going to be impacted by this, and it's going to affect their livelihood?
Actually, it's gonna improve their livelihood.
Well, that was the same argument we used with the Nadal opportunity.
Well, that's apples and oranges.
No, it's not. Here's what I'm getting to, and this is my basic point. I don't need to be argumentative about this, but communication, we're always being, we're transparent as any organization in the city. And it's our property. When you do something that's going to be new and unusual, which I consider this to be, whether you've been doing this all these years, I think there should be have been greater sensitivity to the fact that we just went through a project like this. There could be some areas with this other Nadal group, but we didn't even get the opportunity to explore that because of the some of the letters that were initiated by, I'm sure, some of the staff members there at the tennis facility. So what I would say to you is this, and this goes to you, Tiffany, on any of our programs. If there is something that's new, I mean, if you're replacing one vendor with another one, that's not necessarily what I'm talking about, but if you're incorporating a new programming element into our facility, let us know about it, because it affects our expenses, it affects our revenue, because we have to have staffing to oversee whatever project that you're doing, so there is some expenses that are not transparent that we need to know about. And I know right now the way the special interest revenue and the expenses, they pretty much wipe each other out, so there's not a real big revenue driver there in these programs.
That varies by program to program.
I understand.
Are there other instructors that are going to be working with the lead Rodriguez?
Yes.
There are. So just with it aligned with that other incident that happened with that other group at Patry, where we had the issue with the instructor or whatever it was, they're all checked out and
Everybody goes through it, has an
by
individual.
you guys, not by Rodriguez.
No, everything's through us.
Okay.
And that's why there's a difference. This is not an independent academy coming over, coming to work out our courts and running their own operation. It's our program. He's a vendor of ours. Just no different than Miss Kathy is teaching kinder music here, or a piano teacher. It's no different than anything we've ever done before. It's the exact same
But
protocol.
they're employees of him, not employees
No,
of you.
no.
No,
They're all, that's why this is no different than, that's why it rings 0 alarm bells. It's no different than how we do business. Every single person that's working with him is a vendor with the city of Boca Raton. They are vetted in the same format. Yeah.
So they're not in the pros that Rodriguez is hiring are not his employees. They're not independent contractors. They're employees of the city.
No, they're independent contractors with us. There are independent contractors, like
So
every
they're not
other
your-
pro.
But they're not your employees.
No, none of our vendors are. That's their vendor. None of our pros are. They're all vendors.
An independent contractor.
Yeah.
Correct. But they're
That's
not
what I was
with
asking
him.
was, any of these independent contractors that you have, are they going to be displaced? Because, a lot of them have been committed to working there, and you're saying that Rodriguez is going to give them more opportunities.
Yes. Because he'll generate more business, which will probably need more help, which will then give more work to the pros.
He wants to bring in some more.
I guess the takeaway I'd ask you to consider is when you do something, this may have been normal business, but understand where we were on this, and then having some anonymous complaints, which anybody that writes something doesn't sign a name to it really has no value, but it does raise some concerns that we
Understood.
have. And so I would say that please consider us in these deliberations when you're doing something like that. And if you're not sure, just send us a bulletin, let Mr. Elder or someone let us know.
Easy enough for us to accommodate. It's not even an issue. That's easy enough for us to do.
Yeah, and I respect the ability of the city to accommodate some more skilled players and keep these people home. I mean, that's a good thing to be able to do, to teach them the skills that they go to a higher level, and having applaud you for doing that, and just asking for more consideration next time.
Understood. And we will absolutely accommodate that, no issue.
Craig or Steve, do you have a comment?
No, I'm good.
You good? Thank you, ladies, for coming and explaining all this.
Thank you. No problem.
Our next order of business is the use of Ocean Strand for Gumbo Limbo's annual Sea Turtle Day. Leanne?
Yes. Commissioners, last year, the Friends of Gumbo Limbo came to us, requested use of Ocean Strand for some additional parking during Sea Turtle Day. It was successful. They're requesting the same this year on March 2nd. We have Michelle's here if you want to add any additional comments to it, but it worked out well last
It
year.
worked out very well. It was extraordinarily helpful so that we can maximize the parking available for the attendees to the festival by able to put the volunteers
Did you have a shuttle?
vendors.
You had a shuttle?
We did have a shuttle for those.
You did?
We did, yes. We run 8 buses from Spanish River to the festival just for the visitors, so we ran a separate stop just for those.
Oh, okay.
And we had a ranger station there. I say we do this for the city, for protection and proper parking and to protect the property itself.
When is Sea Turtle Day?
March 2nd.
March 2nd.
we need a motion? Do we need a motion?
Motion be appropriate, yes. So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of using Gilmore Run or Ocean's Grand for their Sea Turtle Day, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you. That was easy. Okay, Boca Championship Golf Tournament sponsorship, Mr. Carboni is here.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Commissioners, residents. Been here a few times to talk about the championship. It is 28 days from now. The newly named Oasis Championship, a Paychex company, is the actual official name and new logo coming out. Last year, your sponsorship was huge to save the championship, keep the championship in town, and keep it on the Golf Channel and broadcast across the country. We are requesting a much smaller sponsorship for this year in promotion of the Boca National Golf Club. It's got some assets, including volunteer sponsorship that involves standard bearers and the children sponsors of the championship, marketing to all those volunteers, includes some advertising in our official program, hospitality, tickets, parking, and general logos and branding on site during the championship. We'll have expecting more than 60,000 attendees during the championship week. We were asking for a $60,000 sponsorship level from the Greater Boca Raton Beach and Park District for 2018.
Thank you, Eddie. Commissioners, you all have a sheet in your packet outlining everything that Eddie has been describing. What's your pleasure? Would you like to, anybody have any comments, any questions for Eddie?
I'd just like to make a general comment. In the best of all worlds, this would be a no-brainer. But we're not in the best of all worlds right now. We have no funding yet for golf course construction, which will take place in next fiscal year. We have no funding yet for buying property on Jeffrey Street, which will take place in the next fiscal year. And we're sitting with, since I've been on the board, the lowest dollar amount in our reserves for the last 6 years. And we're looking at, right now, without any of the funding allocations from the items I mentioned, we're looking at what is technically a $9 million and change deficit as revenue, as income as opposed to outgo. So $60,000 in the realm of things is not a lot of money, but $60,000 has to be looked at very carefully, I think, in at this point in time. I'm not opposed to it. I just think we ought to make sure all our T's are crossed and all our I's are dotted before we went forward with something like this.
Karen?
I just think it's kind of late in the game at this point. There's a month. There's really no way for us to capitalize on the marketing of it. We don't have a marketing team. I mean, if our employees had 6-8 months to do something with the marketing, for the following year, it might be a good idea, right before we open. But I think at this point, with our
standpoint, we removed any kind of an activation or anything that would be cumbersome or hard to implement. We can certainly design a spectator guide ad. We can do all the promotional work, and we're in plenty of time to do that if we get a decision. So that's how that would work.
In lieu of the 500,000 that the assessor gave last year, would you be willing to commit to awarding the district the opportunity to have the championship at the new golf course 1 year after it's been up and running?
So we have a 3-year agreement with the old course at Broken Sound, and at that point, depending on how everything goes, I think we would certainly consider having a championship, but that would be in the future.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a right for refusal by this board, since we already chipped in on this thing. It's more on us if you agree to do it or not.
I think that there's a lot of things that are going to take place over the next 3 years. So, yeah, I don't think we can commit to today to that, but certainly the consideration, absolutely.
You know, I'm like Craig. You know, I hear what Aaron and Steve have to say about our physical condition with the projects that we have. The original request was this year was 200,000, I think, which was certainly beyond our ability to fund. I felt that was a little strong. I do feel like that we could find the $60,000 in our budget without any difficulty, but not $200,000. And I would support going forward with $60,000 sponsorship.
Brianne, do you have any up and coming unforeseen expenses?
Merv is, I talked to Mr. Timberlake, he could not be here tonight because he has some family obligations. He's gonna present at our next meeting an update on the budget. We ended up having some extra cash carried forward, and the budget is actually in your folders, revised. But with that, we also had to, all that money was basically absorbed with the demolition of the golf course, extra money that we're spending on the design of the golf course, extra money that we're spending at the Swimming Racket Center. So we basically end up with about, instead of 1.8, we actually have 2.1 in spending money, I guess you could call it. So is there 60,000? Yes. We have the tennis courts, which we don't know if that's going to be, 150,000 or if it's going to be $1 million. So there are some outstanding things that could take a huge chunk of that money to consider.
Weren't there some items too that were presented with at our last meeting, where there's some things that could be pushed forward and probably will anyway, to give us a little more flexibility on certain things?
We have some projects that we can look at pushing back, but we also have, we've recently noticed some safety concerns at the Patrick Park playground surface. That'll be something that we'll probably need to address sooner than later. Is it 60,000 is there? Yes. It's just in consideration of all these other projects that are not yet in this line items. Pop and pipe project, we don't know how much that's going to be. It's still in permitting. No idea how long permitting is going to take on that. We may end up spending another $1 million on it.
$60,000 is not going to help us there.
No.
And one thing, if it makes any difference as we go through our consolidation of our bank accounts, there is an opportunity to utilize the Florida Prime Fund a little bit more. I know it has its history, but it is safe. It is yielding a significant amount more than typical markets. I do believe, from a budgetary standpoint, I have not had a chance to talk to Merv, but I think one of the pluses in our overall budget is I think the interest assumption is somewhat low, and there is the opportunity to get probably another 30 to 50 basis points if you move more funds into the Florida Prime out of Northern Trust, and that will definitely get you to 60,000. So there's a lot more earnings potential on just if we did a little bit more thought process around our bank accounts, particularly in this rising interest rate market, or at least it's a lot more than it was 2 years ago.
What kind of an interest rate is Florida Prime?
I don't have it in front of me, but I thought it was yielding like 2.6 $72 in December when I was looking at it. It was a lot higher than a typical fund. I mean, I know that a treasury money market fund would yield today around 226. If you expand that into like some corporate debt, which is a little bit more risk, you're more in the 230s, 240s, 250s, but Florida Prime has a little bit longer investment. You still have dollar in, dollar out, but they typically invest in things that are like 90 days, 180 days. And because they're doing that, they're getting a higher yield on those things, and you get the benefit of that. It is a state managed fund, so I feel good it's a state managed fund. They did some squirrely things back in the deep depression of things. I was presented as treasurer a lot of those options. I turned them down, but I think they've learned their lesson and it's safe. So it's something to consider to evaluate. What I'm saying.
The only thing, I mean, we put in the $500,000 last year to keep it actually going, right? I mean, it's still a lot. I mean, it's $60,000. It's still a lot of taxpayer money. I just don't see what we're getting out of it. I mean, it might keep our name out there for like the golf course coming in 2020, but we could always save that $60,000 and then get back into the sponsorship the year before the golf course opens to really get our name out there. I don't know if our course is going to be something that a PGA tournament is going to want. I mean, there's no parking, there's no room for tents out there, there's nothing, I mean, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of money that we're not getting anything out of it.
Mr. Kosky?
If you look at your budget that is in your packet, the revised budget for 2019, you have a fund balance ending projected by Mr. Timber of over $7 million, it's $7,167,517. Now, that is reduced by the following: the sinking fund that we have for beach renourishment, city capital reserves of $1,600,000, and a operating reserve of $2 million. So assuming that all those operating reserves are utilized, which they never seem to be, you still end up with a balance for fiscal year 18-19 of $2,144,000. Now keep in mind that we just received back from the city a month or so ago a little over $1 million, I think, $1.3 million for the true up for the prior fiscal year, because our operating expenses customarily are 10 to 15% under your budget. So when it comes down to saying we're tight, it all depends on how you look at it. We've got $500,000 in this year's budget for the golf course. You've heard Mr. Bradley say we're probably not looking at breaking ground on this golf course until the next fiscal year. We still have yet to receive all of our tax revenues for this year. And we did receive a reimbursement from our insurance program, and we received a reimbursement of over $200,000 from the tax code. So, without saying yay or nay, I just want you to be aware that you have ample funding in your budget to do everything you need to do this year.
Well, based on what you're telling us and what we have here, the first question I should ask is, do we need an allocation for golf course construction in this fiscal year?
No, we're not going to. We still have, in the revised budget of 2019, we have $1 million for golf course design and we had $735,000 for building demolition, golf course building demolition. We have $1.8 million in the revised budget for the Sherman Rec Club construction. We have monies that we're transferring from one fund to another. We still have $100,000 for Sugar Sand Park lighting and AC projects that we haven't even started. And so we have, we still have $1,881,000 for general government. These are very large numbers. You didn't have any funding for golf course sponsorship, but you've got certainly funds in your revised budget for 2019. Whether it be 6,000 or 60, you are not, quote, tight. We never have been, we never will.
I mean, for me, like, whether we have the money or we don't have the money, I just don't see what we're getting out of it. But, like, if we approve it now, how much marketing really is gonna come out of it? I mean, it looks like to me, what we're getting out of it is like tickets and you know, that kind of stuff.
If I may.
Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Please do.
The standard bearers and the volunteers, that actually gets television exposure. So it's something that gives you a chance to promote Boca National in advance of it even being under construction, but to, I think, a very important constituency. All of our clients, all of our volunteers, and the more than 60,000 people that will be attending during championship week.
I can say personally, I know we made a huge commitment last year for saving this, and keeping in mind that the ultimate benefactor is the hospital. That there are people in this community that are extremely thankful for what this district did last year. But for the district's contribution, this tournament would not be here this year. It would be gone. And in my mind, this is not the time to back away from it. Even if it's a nominal amount, your name still should be there. The public should not have the impression that you're now withdrawing from keeping golf in Boca Raton. In fact, just the opposite.
I think we've shown our commitment though to keeping golf in Boca.
Well, you have it for last year, but that went to the hospital.
No, I'm talking about purchasing the Boca Ocean Breeze and putting all that money into what we're doing.
Well, yes and no. We didn't go out and say we want to buy a golf course. We were asked to buy that golf course by the city of Boca Raton.
Right, but what I'm saying is we're showing our commitment to the public.
No, we're showing the commitment to the city. You're a taxpayer, I'm a taxpayer. The city of Boca Raton ran a golf course for years. Had an opportunity to sell it.
Right.
They needed to come to us to assist them in that sale to keep golf in Boca. They could have taken the money and put it in the golf course in themselves. That course lost consistently approximately $600,000 a year. As a taxpayer myself in Boca Raton for the past 50 years, time has come to stop losing money in a golf course and to put ourselves out there and show the community what this district does. We lose money in tennis facilities, we lose money in ball fields, we lose money in virtually everything we do in sitting in this room. It's funded by taxpayer dollars. We're embarking upon a program that has the opportunity to have our tax dollars invested and have a return on it. And I think it's a mistake for you to to just have your name totally eliminated from, be it golf or whether it would be a lacrosse event or whether it be a pickleball event. The same kind of opportunity. Keep your name out there in front of the public to show the public the good that you do. And if it were going to somebody other than the hospital, that may be something different. But the bottom line result is, no matter how you look at it, it is an event for the community.
Eddie, I would like an assurance that in news releases that the district is noted if we do go forward with this. And any of the press releases and what have you, that the district is continuing to support the championship. There was an article in a paper, just an independent paper, and the district wasn't even mentioned. It was all the city had bailed out the championship. You know, the city of Boca Raton needs to be congratulated. Well, my blood was boiling. So that's my big concern, is that if we are going to assist and be part of this, that we also, I want credit. I want to be known that we're helping out this, you know, the tournament and helping out the hospital.
Well, apologies for that.
Well, you didn't write
Writer,
it.
yeah, exactly.
You didn't write it.
But we would certainly recognize the partnership and support last year, this year.
But I have a question though, if we're gonna be putting in a lot less money, how much visibility are we actually gonna get? I mean, last year we were, you know, half and half with the city, but we put in $500,000. This year we're only putting in 60. So does that mean we get a lot less visibility?
Commissioner
We're
Wright,
gonna
you're
get as much-
absolutely correct. Now, that
We're gonna
really-
get as much as someone,
So-
as Oasis, who's putting.
So, $3 million or what have you. So what happens is last year was that special year, we didn't actually have a title sponsor.
Right.
So that was completely an outlier. The city's presence will be much less than it was last year. And the district's presence will be less, but we will provide you great value and exposure for that amount of money.
Did you get one of these, Aaron?
I did.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the district participate to the extent of $60,000 in the Boca Championship golf tournament sponsorship.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion?
The reason I made the motion is some of the points that Art made about our presence. If you know, we're still gonna have our logo on the entrance sign, and the standard bearers are gonna have a district's name on there. We are getting some marketing out of this. You know, we still have the VIP hospitality tent, which I got a lot of mileage out of over the week. But you know, I just think that as a major term with the sponsor being the Boca Raton Hospital, I think that's important for us to support the hospital in that. I think backing away from it doesn't send the best message. I think we're not, you know, I came to the meeting here undecided about this because I did see some value to it last year, maybe not $500,000 worth, but certainly I see the value of $60,000 for what they're offering on this spreadsheet. I think that it's enough to pique my interest and to support the sponsorship.
Well, I certainly got a lot out of it. I got to have breakfast with Johnny Bench. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, so. Yes,
I just
sir.
had I wanna get our executive director's opinion on the budget and the 60,000.
I'm gonna review what Art said. We have 2.1 there as play money. That's what Merv said.
What did Merv say?
Merv's gonna come and talk about the budget and talk about some of these, things that he's adjusted, and it'll be at the next meeting. That's what we have left, so it's up to you how you want to spend that money.
I mean, swimming racket center, and then we just went change orders.
He's moved 1.8 extra over for that. That was from the extra, because we had extra cash carried forward, so he's already got 1.8 set aside there. The only things that we have not lined out are if we have to do the tennis courts,
Right.
Tennis could be up to $1 million.
Tennis could be $1 million.
Well, no, but I'm just going to be honest and throw it out there.
It could be,
Because
yes.
it could,
In this
depending on what
fiscal
the
year.
outcome.
Yes.
So that would cut our play money in half.
Right. Now, you
And
got, the third party person is gonna be out there tomorrow morning at 9, and spend a day out there tomorrow taking core samples and everything that we've hired to do. We'll get your report after that, but we don't have it at this time.
Yeah, folks, and $60,000 is not going to prevent us from doing any of these projects. So I got news for you. And some of these projects are going to fall over into the next fiscal year. We're going to get a nice, we should get a bump on the property values next year. So the ad valorem revenue should be up 5% or more. I think that it's an opportunity for us. I mean, for many, many years, we've struggled with our identity. We're starting to get our identity out there with folks. Now, people know the difference between the city and the district, largely due to our efforts in putting forth Boca National. I just think that anytime we have an opportunity to raise the banner, and we will raise the banner by having our logo present on different sites and on the standard bearers, I just think it's a good investment.
And if we all participate and, you know, we network with the people who are there, particularly, you know, some of the pros, I think Eddie would make sure that we got to talk to some of the pros and let them know who we are and what we're doing. I think that would be a huge
Besides, I
positive.
need to wear my Boca National shirt again.
Let me just say one thing. Eddie cannot sit there and tell you that there's gonna be a commitment to move that tournament. But if I'm anywhere around here, that tournament's gonna be moved. That tournament will be played.
I'd like to call a question. All in favor of participating in the Boca Championship with the Oasis Championship to the tune of $60,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I'd like to abstain.
That's enough. If you're opposed, not to abstain.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, you got to state a reason for the abstention if you'd be able to help us.
Because I still haven't made up my mind.
Well, not your mind, pick one of the
Yeah, I want to be, I want to be honest with myself. I don't want to, it's a very hard decision. You know, yeah, 60,000 won't, really should affect us one way or the other at this point. But, you know, there are a couple of things that, you know, a couple of cards that could hit us over the course of this fiscal year. And I don't want to get caught short. And what I really don't want to be in a position to have to do is at the end of the fiscal year, or toward the end of it, come July and August, we're looking at, well, you know what, we have to raise our tax rate. That's something I want to avoid at all costs, you know. I even eat my own cooking to avoid that. So that's the thing that sticks in my mind.
What was, we did a voice count. What was it?
3 to 2.
So it doesn't really matter which way you vote, because it'll still be 3-2, so.
And I just offer for the record that absent a conflict or appearance of a conflict, all are required to vote.
Thank you very
Sorry.
much. Sorry. And I do, on the other hand, see there is a benefit to it. That's why. All right, I'm gonna go with my gut and I'm gonna oppose.
Okay, so that passes 3 to 2.
You know, the one thing, Commissioner, about being on this commission as long as I have, is that there are times when we have issues that, where there's conflict and you don't know where to go with it. And being in opposition doesn't mean that we've created a
Sunshine Law refresher. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've got something in your packet.
I do. Would it be easier if I spoke from the podium or would you stay where I am?
Stay where you are.
Okay. So good evening, Madam Chair, congratulations, Commissioners, Madam Vice Chair. We've been asked to come and provide just a brief Sunshine Law refresher on Chapter 286, which is the Sunshine Law and the Florida Public Records Act. We do have a PowerPoint, which I believe Joanne is putting up. I did provide you with copies of the PowerPoint as well. I've tried to condense this down. This is a presentation that we give from time to time to some of our public officials. And, for the record, elected municipal officials, elected county commissioners, state reps, they're required to receive 4 hours of training annually on the Sunshine Law, public records, and Florida ethics laws. I've tried to condense it down to about 15 minutes. Feel free to jump in if there's any questions. I'm going to move through it relatively quickly. I know you're all generally familiar. But I just wanted to ask preliminarily, is anybody familiar with this particular book, this manual? This is the Florida Government of the Sunshine Manual.
We got a pamphlet too.
It's in its 40th edition. 40 years ago, this was a pamphlet. It was about 15 pages 40 years ago. Every year, this comes out in very fine pica, very fine font. This is a continuously evolving area of the law, but it pertains specifically to open government, transparency, public records, and what we all do. We do it for a living, we're volunteers, but it's an important subject matter that I'm going to touch on very briefly. Couple things. The Sunshine Law first is generally used to define two things, but it actually is Chapter 286. It's often included in Chapter 119, which is Florida Public Records Law. People say the Sunshine Law, they're often referring to both of those things, but the reality is the Sunshine Law is Florida's open government, open meeting laws. Let's see here. It's codified in two places. One is Article 1, Section 24 of the Florida Constitution. Note that it's not, it's up in the back, Article 6, Article 7. Article 1 of the Florida Constitution. It's also in Chapter 286 of the Florida statutes. And the language from the Constitution and the statutes are not identical, but similar. And I have some presentations that actually include the specific sections, and I pulled them out just for expediency's sake. There are three key requirements. This is right out of Chapter 286. Florida law tells us that all meetings of public boards or commissions must be 1, open to the public, 2, reasonable notice must be provided, and 3, minutes must be taken. The good thing for you all as public officials is that you don't really need to worry about most of those things from an operations standpoint. The district staff is going to provide you with a public building for your meetings. The district's going to provide notice of those meetings. The district is going to take minutes. The one thing that you need to be particularly mindful of is what actually constitutes a meeting for purposes of the Sunshine Law. So the purpose first is to ensure that the public has an absolute, unequivocal right of access to the entire decision-making process. It's not just the final vote or the final action where the vote occurs. It's every step of the way the public has a right to be there. They're entitled to hear the deliberations, the discussions. If we were to have an advisory board under any circumstances, if they were a board making recommendations, the public has a right to attend all of those meetings. Anytime an issue coming before this board is discussed, the public has a right to be there. The public doesn't always have a right to participate, but they always have a right to be there to hear what's going on. So who is subject to the Sunshine Law? We know independent taxing districts, or Chapter 189 independent district created by the legislature. There are also dependent districts, which are created by local governments. It applies equally to elected and appointed boards, applies to municipal commissions, school boards, county commissions, advisory boards, although I know we don't have any. It does not apply to the judiciary, and it does not apply to the legislature. And the legislature gets to make the rules, and for whatever reason they found it in their collective best interest to exempt themselves from the requirements of the Sunshine Law. That's a matter of some debate from time to time during legislative sessions, but it does not currently apply in Tallahassee. There's a very limited exception for fact-finding committees, but that exception very recently no longer applies to decision-making bodies. So as a final decision-making body, several years ago you would have had the option to convene in a smaller fact-finding setting, but that exception no longer applies to the final decision-makers, who you all are, nor does it apply to private organizations. Okay, so this is a particularly pertinent slide. What is a meeting for the purposes of the Sunshine Law? Under Florida law, a meeting is any gathering, informal or formal, of 2 or more members of the same collegial body at which a matter is being discussed that will foreseeably come before the body at some future moment. So in practical sense, what that means is any time any 2 of you are together, doesn't need to be physically together, because sunshine law communications can occur by email, they can occur over the telephone, they can occur online and social media. But any discussion, dialogue, interaction between any two of you on a matter that may foreseeably come before this board is a meeting for purposes of the sunshine law that needs to be noticed, minutes need to be taken, and the public needs to have a right of access to it. There's not a requirement that a quorum be present, so I know we need 3 people to conduct any business here, but any 2 of you can have a meeting for purposes of the sunshine law, so I'm going to be mindful of. Written correspondence and email. We actually, in our broader presentation, have quite a few slides on these topics. I'm going to touch on it very briefly here. But suffice it to say that the sunshine law applies online. So when you all are included on emails, you need to be very mindful that if your colleagues on the board are also included, and we get into situations where one person starts replying all to those communications and a dialogue unfolds in an email format or online, that would be considered a meeting for purposes of the sunshine law. So if you all receive an email from the executive director, or from my office, or from Melissa, or from any other staff member, we are not on the board. We are not part of this collegial body. So if you receive an email from us and you want to respond to the person who sent the email, that's fine. You can respond to Dan, you can respond to Art, Melissa, myself. The key is that the other members of the board are copied on that email. Avoid using reply all, because you don't want to have that interactive communication in an email format. Now, sir.
I got a question.
Yes.
You know, if we're communicating with Brianne on an issue and that goes to the server, then everybody has access to our opinion.
Yes.
So is that permissible so long as everybody else doesn't jump in and start?
You can communicate with Brianne, with staff, with our office, with a constituent. You can communicate with whoever you'd like to communicate with the exception of your 4 other board members. Now, it's okay for you to know how the other members feel. I mean, you may all be at the same civic association meeting or city commission meeting where a topic is being discussed that's going to come before this board, and the chair may get up and express her opinion on a particular issue, and you may hear that opinion. It's okay for you to hear how the others feel about a particular issue. The key for purposes of the sunshine law is avoiding interactive communication between the two of you. So if a journalist is a reporter's writing a story about the golf course and calls the vice chair for a quote, and she gives her quote and states her opinion on a particular issue, you may all read that in paper, and her opinion will then be out there. That's okay. You all can know how another member feels. The key is avoiding that interactive communication.
I think it's slightly different. Is that if, let's say, the commissioner responds to a reporter and says this is what they feel, okay, but what you're saying is that apparently we all have access to look at a server and see everyone's communications.
They're all public records.
They're all public records, right? So Erin sends a note out. I see it the same day that she talked back and forth with someone. I can see her communication.
Absolutely.
No issue.
No issue.
Okay.
The key is if you were if you were to reply to Erin, or if that third person were to be used as a liaison or an intermediary between the two of you, and I have a couple of slides that get into that particular issue. It's actually a good case study I want to mention when I talk about that briefly. Here, actually, the use of non-members as liaisons between board members. So while Brianne or Art or myself, we can send you all an email. The key is you would not reply to all, copying your colleagues on the board. But a non-board member cannot be used as a liaison or an intermediary. So, Craig, you can't call Art and ask how the chair feels about a particular item, because he can't be the conduit between you and another member of the board. Interestingly enough, just as an anecdote, there's an independent special taxing district in Broward County, North Broward Hospital District, which is currently undergoing some criminal investigations regarding sunshine law violations. They have 3 board members, 1 current member, 2 former members who've been charged for sunshine law violations, as well as their former executive director and their former general counsel. All for violating these specific laws, and the executive director and the general counsel, who are not board members, were charged with being liaisons in the context of solicitation to violate the sunshine law and conspiracy to violate the sunshine law. So even a non-board member, under certain circumstances, can be charged with a sunshine law violation. That's the first time in Florida I've actually seen a non-board member charged with sunshine law violation. Typically, when we see these cases rise to the criminal level, it's the board members that are charged with the violation. But in this particular instance, which I believe goes to trial in April, there's 2 non-board members who are tried with the board members, all for violating these particular rules. But again, it's the use of a third party as a liaison which would run afoul of the requirements in Sunshine Law. So any non-board member can't be used. Now, oftentimes you may have a reporter or a constituent who simply doesn't know. And you can be talking to one person and they can say, well, I just spoke to this commissioner and she believes that. And all of a sudden you have an indirect or inadvertent dialogue. So you just need to be mindful that should you see a conversation going in that direction, you may want to take a step back, step away, and not put yourself in that position where you're kind of brushing up against some of these requirements that should be a conversation that would otherwise need to be had in an open meeting with notice and understanding. There are some exceptions. Thankfully, we're unlikely to encounter many of them, but they do exist under Florida law. One pertains to pending litigation. We're thankfully not involved in any litigation at the moment. If and when we were ever involved in a lawsuit and your legal counsel needed your advice, Florida law does allow us to meet in what's called a shade session under very strict procedural requirements, where if, as your general counsel, we were to request a shade session, it's still required to be noticed. It still opens in a public meeting, and then it would adjourn to a shade session where the only people allowed in the room are the board, your executive director, your legal counsel, and a court reporter. The legal counsel can then solicit the board's advice in a closed-door setting. Everything is transcribed, the court reporter is in the room, nothing is off the record in the shade. The meeting then reconvenes in a public session before it finally adjourns, because no action can be taken in the shade. That transcript remains sealed through the litigation. Once all of the appeals have been addressed and resolved, the transcript is then unsealed and becomes a public record. So there is a narrow exception for when litigation is occurring. There's several others as well. I know we don't have any labor unions, but there is an exception for collective bargaining. Under certain circumstances, there's an exception for selection committees. There's also, this is a relatively recent exception. A number of years ago, the legislature enacted a security of public buildings exception. So in the event at some future moment we wanted to have a meeting that spoke about the security of our public facilities, we now have the prerogative to have that meeting in a closed door session, which we can then do. So maybe something to consider at some future moment. Violations? Yeah.
One quick question. The exception related to labor negotiations.
Yes.
Does that apply to negotiations for a single position?
Only union collective bargaining.
Only, okay.
Yes. No, I think that was his question.
On the security of public
Yes.
buildings, that, our world is parks.
Yes.
Does that mean that also has to have a transcriber and all that, or can we just have a closed session?
No,
about
actually,
security?
the only exemption that provides for a court reporter and transcription is the litigation shade session. The other 3 on here are actually, well, I shouldn't say that entirely, because the procurement one does have a transcript as well.
Okay.
But the collective bargaining and the security are exempt from 286. So there's no transcript, no notice, but no records are created as well. So we're very mindful, because any documents associated with that could theoretically become public records, but there's an exception for the public record side of that as well. So it does work both ways, but the answer is it's not true. Violations, any member of a collegial body who violates the Sunshine Law may be guilty of a non-criminal infraction, that's a civil infraction, not exceeding $500. I mentioned the Broward Health situation. That's the second problem there. The second bullet point is that if a person were to knowingly, willfully, wantonly violate the Sunshine Law, there actually is a criminal component to it. It's a second-degree misdemeanor. The criminal component applies to advisory boards as well as members-elect. There's one other just kind of anecdotal point as well I'll offer. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the name W.D. Childers. Anybody who's been in Florida for a long time may recognize the name. He's the former president of the Florida Senate. He's from North Florida, Escambia County. He was in the Senate up through the 80s. He was termed out of office. He was actually in the legislature, and the president of the Senate at the time, Chapter 286, was enacted back in the late 70s. But he was termed out of office in the legislature. He went back to Escambia County. He ran for county commission. He won a seat on the county commission, and during the time when he was in the legislature, the Sunshine Law didn't apply. it did apply when he became county commissioner, and at that time, the county was looking at some locations for an ice hockey rink, and there were some issues regarding some potential development, and he had some communications with one of his colleagues on the county commission, and his colleague was concerned about the nature of the dialogue and called the state attorney's office, flew him in. He ended up, he was charged, he was convicted, he ended up serving about 35 days in jail for violating the Sunshine Law. He was sentenced to 60 days, he served about half of that. He's the only person I'm aware of who's actually been incarcerated for violating the Sunshine Law. I'm not telling you that for any reason to scare you, other than to say that it does happen, it has happened, just something to be mindful of. So I just wanted to be aware. Those are really the nuts and bolts of the Sunshine Law. If you have any questions over time, you're always welcome to call us to ask. The second component I wanted to touch on briefly is Florida's public records law.
Before you do that.
Yeah.
Just another hypothetical question. With the golf course, with the school, there's, we get barrage of emails.
Yes.
Okay, and so in the past I've responded to them, but it's more like, thank you for your concern, we listened to you. And part of it is that, my question is that it feels like as a public member, I think they're looking for a response. All they're looking for is, did you hear me? I told you. So they're looking for a response. So either we all collectively respond or we don't all respond. And I think that kind of puts us in a situation like we're not, no one's listening. So
Well, one of the critiques of the Sunshine Law is that the first person out of the bag is the one who gets to speak. Because theoretically, you could send an email to your colleagues. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about
But
public
third
sends
party.
everyone in this room an email.
But let's say
Yeah.
you were to respond to that email.
Right.
And you were to respond in detail how you felt about whatever the issue was. And all of your colleagues were to see that.
Yep.
That's okay. The problem then becomes none of your colleagues can now respond because they can't have the interactive communication with you. So you're better responding directly to the person without copying everybody. Or the person needs to understand that you're not being rude and not responding. You're simply kind of hamstrung a little bit by Florida law that doesn't allow you to respond.
Okay.
We see this a lot online in social media, on Facebook and on Twitter. There's an AGO that came out a number of years ago, which essentially confirms that the Sunshine Law applies to all of these different social media platforms. So we have a situation where a public agency runs a Facebook page and a commissioner posts something on that page, which happens more often than you think. So the fact that one member of the board put information up there and posted something about how they feel up there is fine. It's when another member goes to respond, that's what triggers the interactive communication. So the first one out of the gate, so really is the one that gets to speak, no other member can then respond.
But is it opinion or is it fact? I mean, if facts, is it okay to state a fact without this?
It's really anything. It's any
Anything.
discussion that may foreseeably come before this board at some future moment. Fact or opinion, how you feel about a particular issue, and you can state your opinion, or you can state the facts, but no other member can respond. In other words, if you were to post something, and then another member of the commission wanted to correct you, or add something to whatever you said, that would be a dialogue between the two of you that would trigger the requirements of the Sunshine Law.
Jacob,
Okay.
to Craig's point, let's say that Harold Chaffee sent me an email and said, how do you feel about the location of the clubhouse moving from? And then I write back and say, Harold, I think it's a great idea to move it to the southeast portion of the, and then Craig writes to Harold, sees that on the server. Craig writes to Harold and says, Harold, I am in favor of moving the clubhouse to the south without making any reference to my email. Is that
No, because the two of you are not having interactive communication. That really is the key. It's the interactive communication by two members of the same collegial body.
Further to your reference to social media,
Yes.
I would take it then that even on a Facebook page other than our own, if there was, let's say Greg made a comment on Boca National, on another Facebook page, say a Boca Raton Facebook page, and I made a comment about the same thing, saying, okay, Craig, you're wrong. If I said something like that in another venue, does the same thing still?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And this really is an area where the law has not caught up with the technology. And we see that a lot, particularly in Twitter and in the context of public records. But the communication between the two of you on a social media platform would absolutely trigger the requirements of the sunshine law, no question about it.
Chip,
Yes.
just a clarification. If we all get letters from constituents,
Yes.
and it's dear commissioners,
Yes.
and Craig responds and says, thank you for your consideration or whatever, and then without referencing, just replying to that person, I can respond to that person and say thank you?
You can respond to that person only in detail. You can respond to that person and say whatever you like in response to that letter. The key is you want to be mindful about not responding to that person in detail and copying your colleagues on the board.
Thank you.
But you can respond to that non-board member, whether it's staff or a constituent, in all the detail you like. And just keep in mind, that email becomes a public record.
Absolutely.
And it's not a problem if Craig were to see your response, because he's only looking at a public record. He's not having an interactive communication with you. Okay, so chapter 119. Florida's public records law is really not part of the sunshine law, although it's often referred to under that same umbrella. The public records law is incredibly broad in Florida, and this is the definition right out of the statute. Essentially, a public records, when it says all, it really does mean all, and there's a lot of different types and formats of records. But any of that, collective information, the key being that's made or received pursuant to law or ordinance, or in connection with the transaction of official business by any agency. The safe assumption is that, as we all know, any records, documents, emails, correspondence, information that you all receive, that we all collectively receive in our role as public officials, is a public record. Again, talking just briefly about computer records and emails, there's a litany of case law that tells us that computer records, electronic records, all fall under the umbrella of public records. You all have email addresses, public email addresses that allow for your emails to cross over the district server. All of the information is retained on the service. The good news is you don't have a burden of retaining that information. However, if you use private email address for public business, that's okay, but to be mindful that to the extent you engage in public business over a private email, you're the custodian of those private emails. It's a bad practice. I'd encourage you to avoid it to the extent possible. But if it happens, just be mindful that those emails you need to maintain, they need to be retained. You can either forward them to your public email address, you can forward them to staff. But if you are the only person that has access to a private email, and that email contains public business, that email is still a public record, even if it's on a personal computer. And there are a number of situations and cases that we see as recently as last year where courts have ordered public officials to turn over laptops for forensic examinations, turn over cell phones for forensic examinations. So it happens, but just be mindful that to the extent that you can keep your public business on your public email address, on the district server, it'll take the burden off of you and potentially save you a headache down the road. Transitory messages, and I just want to talk briefly about transitory messages. The state of Florida's the Department of Library and Archive Services puts out a number of retention schedules. There's I think about half a dozen of them, including one for local governments, there's one for hospital districts, there's one for colleges and universities, but there's one for local government. And those retention schedules tell us how long we need to retain public records. And there's an index in the back, about 150 plus categories, and each public record theoretically falls into one of those categories, and each category needs to be retained for a certain period of time. One of those categories is known as a transitory message, and oftentimes transitory messages are considered to be text messages, and when people first started using text, the terms were used somewhat interchangeably, although they are far from identical. A transitory message, just to be mindful, is a message of short-term value based upon the content, not the format of that information. So transitory messages could be emails, they could be letters, they could be phone tickets to return a phone call. They may be text messages, but text messages are not always transitory. Transitory messages cannot be used to set policy, act as a receipt, confirm transactions. Most often in the context of transitory messages, we see confirmation of calendar invites, phone messages, and those need to only be retained until their administrative value is lost. But when we get into text messages in general, we know that texts are very hard to maintain, they're hard to produce. I think I mentioned it once before, several meetings ago, there was a recent decision out of the Fourth District Court of Appeals, essentially reconfirming the public nature of text messages. So just be mindful when you use that medium to communicate, that text can be problematic and it can cause us some headaches from time to time. Who's authorized to inspect public records? Anyone, at any time, for any reason. There's no requirement that there be a legitimate need or a special purpose. Public records requests can be made orally, they can be made electronically, they can be made in writing. Our staff is trained to respond to those requests. Each agency is required to designate a custodian of public records, who's the person that's appointed in charge of essentially maintaining records and responding to requests. It's a little sensitive, let's see. And what? Okay. And when we're required to respond, thankfully, since our office has been engaged, we've come to learn the district does not have a tremendous amount of public record requests. Some special districts have an incredibly high volume. We've not seen very many here, but we have seen them from time to time. There's not a requirement or a statutory time frame in which an agency is required to respond. The time to respond really depends on what the nature of the request is. But when requests come in, we just work with staff to ensure that the person who made the request has been acknowledged, that there's some dialogue between the requester and the district. Of course, we can charge time and copy costs for producing any public records. So there's a process that will work with your staff as needed to address all those issues in responding. There are a number of exemptions from public record requests, but they're very narrowly construed. Public records law is liberally construed in the context of both government. When in doubt, more likely than not, we're talking about public records. Now we have some situations, I believe, we may have some child information, we may have some contact information regarding law enforcement officers, firefighters. There's some information that relates to exemptions contained within Chapter 119. But absent an exemption, and we need to cite the exemption when we assert it, but absent a specific exemption, all the information that we're dealing with as it relates to the district is a public record. So those are the things I wanted to cover. If you have any questions now, if you think of any questions later, you know where to find me, you know where to find Sam, or anyone else in our office. We're always happy to help in any way we can. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jacob. That was excellent. I think we all can benefit from this.
Thank you very much.
You still have to do the 4-hour training?
You are not required to sit through 4 hours of training.
Thank you.
But suffice to say, that may change, because the elected municipal officials, state reps, state senators, county commissioners, constitutional officers, has not been extended to special districts yet.
Okay, we now come to the approval of payroll and invoices. Mr. Treasurer?
There was a change to the invoices, and there's an addition from what's in your schedule. The addition was for FPL relocation of the main power lines for the turf fields for roughly $29,801. The total invoices we're asking for approval for is $144,181.27.
Give me a second. Discussion, please. Hearing none, all in favor of approving the invoices, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Joanne, thank you very much. Reports and discussions. Brianne, as Executive Director.
Commissioners, I don't have too much tonight. I do have a couple of facility things that I'm going to defer to Melissa on. We met last week at the weekly Gumbo Limbo Boardwalk walkthrough construction meeting. Commissioner Wright happened to be on site that day when they were discussing an upcoming change order. So I'll let Melissa take over and pass around some photos of that.
Yeah, quickly, I want to thank Leanne for calling and give us a heads up. She's doing a fantastic job of communicating with us, so thank you very much on that. So what I'm going to do is just pass around. These are both the same pictures for you guys to see. But this is not anything you need to vote on tonight. But we're excited to tell you, because of the communication in advance, no money has been spent. This is going to be a request that's going to come to the board probably by the next board meeting on January 22nd. The demolition phase is complete out at the Gumbo Limbo Boardwalk and Tower project. So this is going to be a change order for what you'll see is some rotten wood. When they went to demo the guardrails, and Leanne, please feel free to speak up if I misspeak. But as they went to remove the guardrails, there was some rotten wood found. And so we brought you some pictures just so you could see that. The change order is going to be to obviously change out those rotten woods to make it more secure. we were told, I asked, can you give us a ballpark? We got him down to where he would go as much as saying that it will be below $10,000. But we will have that price by the next meeting and bring it to the board to review and to vote upon. And Aaron was able to see what they were talking about in place out there as well. So that'll be coming before you just as a heads up. Gumbo Limbo at the boardwalk, close to where the tower is.
Okay.
Real close to
That's
where the
not the
tower
area
is.
that we rebuilt.
No.
Okay.
It's on the way from Murals to the tower.
It's right
basically.
before you get to the old tower location.
Yeah.
No, it's
It's
cut off in-
further this way,
It's
towards the
an
Murals,
extension.
before,
Oh, okay.
before the rebuild.
Got it.
So that is that, as far as the rest of the Gumbo Limbo update goes, they're putting the rebar down in place. Oh, and just for your notice, I did reiterate to them and ask them that they are done with demolition now. That does not mean where there will be no change orders after that, but I think as most of the board members know, there's fewer change orders once you finish your demolition, because change orders oftentimes comes from things that were unforeseeable, and you don't know there's an issue until you get in there during the demolition phase and experience something, and that's what happened with this. So, that does not mean there will be 0 change orders after this one, but there should be few, if any, and we will obviously try to keep it down to 10, hopefully. So, otherwise, just so, do you want me to go ahead and give a quick update?
Yes.
Okay. On the boardwalk and tower, as I mentioned, demolition is completed. They're doing the rebar, place for the tower, just in case you're curious. Here's some pictures where you can see the base of the tower being put together, so the rebar is going in, and then they will come in and pour 3 feet thick concrete base, and we'll be getting the posted from Texas is where they have to drive to pick them up. So, work is moving forward, and I just thought you guys might like to see some pictures of that.
It'll be a solid tower.
Yeah, so, Gumbo Limbo pump project is the same update as when I was sending you monthly updates. We're still waiting on, Jennifer is working with the Army Corps of Engineers, and she's contacting them weekly for updates, but we're not through, the permitting phases yet, and she's hoping to, hopefully within the next 2 weeks, really get some clarity on where we'll be at. And as soon as that permitting's done, then we'll be ready to rock and roll, bid that out to get a construction company to work on it. Red Reef Central restrooms, the notice proceed was given for today. I was not able to make it out there today to see if any work has started yet, but the central restrooms, the notice proceed was given for today, and they are contracted to be done May 7th. The north restroom, they were trying to make it so the notice to proceed would go today as well, but there was 2 items that still before the building inspector to be reviewed. That project should not take as long as the central restrooms, because the central restrooms have a handicap and accessibility issue that has to be fixed. So they should still finish up around the first week of May, both of those projects. The Patrick Park artificial turf, we've got the contract here. The construction company has signed the contract. So we have that here to execute. And then as Craig mentioned, I don't know if you guys remember, but in October, you approved $1,500 for us to get a quote from FPL of what it will cost to relocate the power main coming in. That's what the $29,000 with. I'm going to set up as soon as we get the contract signed, I will set up a meeting with Calvin and Giordano and myself and the construction company, and we will go over where we're at with all the FPL work and get that moving. The importance of that tonight is it's 6 to 8 weeks with the FPL work, so we need to get moving on that so it can be done by March 11th, and we can hit our start date of March 11th to get that project and keep the timeline going.
Can we just pause there on a second on that one? I have the contract here, and did, had the chance to kind of read it for the meeting, and so it was very quick what we talked about the last time when we assigned them and selected the vendor. And I just want to bring everyone's attention so that the reason I was hesitant to go forward on the project was our ability to manage it, okay? And so I guess as one thing I think we should do going forward on the management of the project, if Melissa, you're the one who's going to meet with them and beyond the cost, we need to really be managing it very, very close. This is a fixed price contract, lump sum. So, and it wasn't real clear to me, but in the fine print of that schedule that we had, and I asked the question, is there any, I think Bob asked this question, is there any additional, what do you call it, retention or any additional things in there? Well, buried in that whole thing, there's $160,000 of retention that was in there for unknown. So that's good, I think that's great, someone did the planning on it. But when you looked across the board at all of the components of the the contract. It was a very fine print document, and in there they talk about the demolition, the irrigation, and the different components and how everyone bid, okay? And to me, when I looked at it, CGA did their job. They said, we expect them to come in at this. So everyone kind of came in as you'd expect all over the board. Some were high, some were low. My whole point of saying this is that irrigation, for example, our friends at CSR, they expected to be $518,000 just for irrigation. The CGA people estimated $275,000. That's a big difference between the two. And what I'm saying is that's great. We budgeted the high end, we're expecting that, but we need to manage this company to make sure they deliver it per the specifications of the contract. Someone has to be really tight on them. They were way under on their demo. They estimated $54,000 for demo. CGA said they thought it'd be about $300,000. The low bidder thought it was like $200,000. So it's all over the board, but what I'd like not to see is this coming back to this group a year from now that says, hey, the demo really cost $700,000. I'm sorry, here's your change order for a demo charge. I'm expecting this whole thing to be as it was spec'd. The contract's very tight, but I'm only looking at page 21 through 30 or something like that. I don't know what is between 1 to 20. So
I think it's important to know that this contract was designed by our staff and I think has been reviewed. Didn't Jacob, did you review the
Yeah,
contract?
it was part of the
bid specs. It was part of the bid specs in the end, yes.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why you see those pages on there, those numbers, is that was pulled out of the entire book of page specs. So you're not seeing missing parts of the contract, you're seeing the whole
Okay.
contract.
So if we're gonna come in on budget, next cycle, I mean, I just wanna be sure that there's a safety net of some volunteer or Melissa, someone is assigned to it, or we hire someone to manage this so it comes in exactly where we expect it and not be surprised.
Melissa, are you comfortable taking on that responsibility? Well, that was what I was hired to do.
There you go. Okay, good.
So myself and Mohammed, and I've already had a nice conversation with CSR. I actually even pulled the whole, for me, this is my first major project with this organization. I'm brand new here, so if we don't bring this in on budget, I'm gonna be in big trouble. You don't want that. I even gave that sob story.
Okay.
That works.
Thank you.
So that's the Patrick Park, and then, the tennis courts, as I mentioned, that's TARP, I'm sorry, the tennis courts, as I mentioned quickly, they will be out there tomorrow, Geosyntec, to start the third-party review to give us a recommendation of what the condition of the base and the asphalt is, to see whether that's something they think they could recommend a, full barrier over, or if we think we need to completely redo the courts at this time. Just a few things on the swim and racket center. The push door activations will be installed on January 25th. We did the final approval of the signs, so those are being manufactured, and we approved the final color of the shades and the blinds, and those are going to be. One heads up that we're going to need to address in the future, and I'm working on some recommendations for that, is we do have a problem with the tile that was installed in that building. That was they did not install a non-slip tile, so we have a slippage issue going on there.
One of my patients brought it to my attention, and I went over, and it's very evident that we could have someone have a serious accident. So, yes.
What about, what's that stuff you put on exterior pavers with some each, like that shark tooth or whatever they call it?
I'm currently, I've met with 2 different companies out there to get quotes on an application process to go on top of the tile to give it some
So you
vibration.
don't have to replace it.
That's my hope, and that's what I'm looking at. At least both companies have said, yes, they can put an abrasive down, but
Yeah.
we'll do that, and I'm just waiting on a price.
See?
Yeah, what is the vendor's liability here? And,
We will have to ask Mike that and work with them. The vendors installed what was asked for, so it's not gonna be the vendor.
This goes back to the architect?
That would be my guess. I don't understand why a building would have been proposed next to the pool with no kind of non-slip tile. Bob, did you have a comment?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the person that sold, it's the person that sold what was ordered. It's the construction company put in what was on the plans.
Mhm.
So, I don't know if Art's got any thoughts on that, but that's where the concern comes with me.
We'll touch base Joseph Muma and see if he can give some insight on the time.
Okay, thank you. Brianne, anything else?
That's it, I'm gonna send it over to Mr. Horowitz.
Mr. Katzen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, you may recall several meetings ago, our office was asked to look into the situation regarding a gentleman named Alex Petrikowski, who is currently occupying one of the warehouse sheds, I'll call it, on the west part of the golf course parcel. We've done some research, I think we provided a brief update by email a couple weeks ago. Tonight I'm here to ask for your authorization to file a lawsuit to seek his ejectment and removal from the property. There are a number of different causes of action we were looking at: unlawful detainer, ejectment, trespass. A couple wrinkles just to make you all aware of. The location of his shed, we'll call it, or the shed he's occupying, is not on property currently owned by the district. It's on a parcel owned by the city. We've had some conversations with the city attorney's office, the city manager's office. They're certainly on board with whatever efforts that the district wants to pursue. They had some thoughts of their own. But with your direction and permission, I'd like to continue those conversations, and should we feel the need, go ahead and file a lawsuit, seek a writ of possession that can then be enforced and have him removed from the property.
What kind of a timeline is this going to be on?
One of the options we're looking at is an action called unlawful detainer, which has a summary process in county court. Typically, it takes about 5 days to file a response after a complaint has been filed. We'll prepare the complaint in fairly short order, but it's a condensed process. We hope to have it done within a month. But again, we need to coordinate with the city, make sure they're on board. There may need to be some kind of assignment of rights, because typically it would be the city, the property owner, and the plaintiff in the action. I'm not sure they want to pursue that directly. They may have us do it on their behalf. So we would need to work with them to figure out the best approach as it relates to actually filing lawsuits, since they are in fact the property owner of record.
Eviction wasn't.
Eviction is probably not the best option, because typically with an eviction, the person would have to have some rights to be there that he's essentially exceeded. And he never had a lease, he never had any rights. But there are some other options that we're looking at, and this particular unlawful detainer option has a summary process which might be the most expeditious.
Commissioners?
I agree. Let's go fast.
We need a motion.
I would like a motion, yes, please.
Can I make a motion to proceed with the necessary lawsuit or additional discussion as needed with the city and proceed to closure of this matter?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of proceeding with this action, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes, Joanne.
Thank you, Madam Chair, that is all I have.
That's all you have. Commissioners, so we'll start with you, Commissioner Ernst.
I have one item, and that is I went to the Boca Bowl, and I got something for Steve because it has his name on it. And so I thought it was appropriate that I didn't see Steve there, so I thought he should have that pass.
Perfect, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Can I do that after the sunshine law?
That's right, yeah.
Disclosure.
That was very thoughtful of you. Now everybody will know who I am.
This is correct.
As if they don't already.
Well, there are 2 or 3 that do.
Anything else?
No.
Aaron?
Nope.
Steve?
Actually, 2 things. One, if it's okay with the other commissioners, I have a corporate event on March 4th that I need to attend. Would it be okay to move our first March meeting to the 11th?
I think it's spring break in there, so there isn't.
It's until the 18th.
Yeah, but I think I have conflict, that's, if we can allow that one.
From what date to what date?
March 4th to the 11th.
I can do that.
I can do that.
I can't tell you, I don't have my calendars being charged right now.
Do you want me to go get that?
No, it's okay, it's not synced up yet, I didn't sync it up, go to the office when I came back, so, I'd rather defer that if we can, we have time to make that decision, so.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. Future agenda item.
Yeah, I had something else I wanted, oh, yeah.
311. Joanne, would you make a note of that, please?
With regard to the Swimming Racket Club, I know we're over budget. How far over budget?
We don't know right now how far we're gonna be. We've added another, Merck has added another 1.8
just for the record, the third, since I've been here, third project where we've gone way above budget. And I'd like to, I understand sometimes it can't be helped,
Yes.
okay? With the science playground, there was ductwork, electrical, plumbing that was underneath the surface that nobody was aware of. But I really would like to see that come to an end. I would rather have somebody bid $5 million on a $5 million project than bid $3 million on a project. Us be by statute forced to take that low bidder, only to find out now we're at $5 million because there was $2 million worth of work that wasn't included for whatever reason. So that's my pet peeve.
Understood.
The other thing I would like to do is go on record to thank Maddie for her service to the board. She's done a fantastic job, and I wish her well in her retirement.
These may be one of the last few minutes she does, so she will hear that.
Just one final comment on the tennis issue that we talked about earlier. One of the things that I hear occasionally from city council in the past is we don't communicate to them, and I'm frustrated to know that can even be possible. But hopefully, with Presidents of Tiffany and Michael Calvert, we have better communication with them, knowing what we're doing. At the same token, I expect the same response back from the city on our projects, because it is our property, and we do need to know what's going on with this property. I'm not objecting to the concept of what's been planned, but I'd like to know ahead of time, what the expense and revenue stream is going to be to those projects, rather than having to find out about it through third parties. I'd like to know firsthand. And we've gone through special events revenue before and had discussions about those activities, some of which were not generating interest, but yet we're continuing. And I think I'll take another, when we get into budget period, I'll ask those same questions about the special interest, because they're break even for the most part. The revenue covers the expense that we have in there, and I don't expect to make a great deal of money from those, but I do want to make sure that we're using our resources most effective fashion. And with that, Happy New Year to everybody on the commission, and Susie, all the best. You've got all of our support. And Aaron, to you, Craig, good luck. This next year.
You going somewhere?
I just appreciate the input that we get from Craig with his financial background. It's been very helpful in eliminating some of these issues, and thanks for doing that. It makes the chairman's job a lot easier when you have those kind of resources. So, good luck.
I'd like to add something under reports and discussions for future meetings. I'd like to have our construction manager have a voice. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Kosky?
No, I think Wayne did a good job tonight. The consultants will be presenting that to you every week, every meeting, not only on the consultant end, but also on the construction end of the golf course project. And if you'd like it on the other projects, I'm happy to do that as well.
Thank you. I had the privilege of sitting in with the team today, and every one of our team that we have hired to do the golf course is taking this like it's their own personal mission to do it well and do it as conservatively as possible, as far as how much is it, and this is what they say, how much is it going to cost us? So I think we're going to have a very, very good result. And I want to thank you all for your vote of confidence, and I look forward to this year, and Happy New Year to everyone. And we have future agenda items of the dates for that March meeting, and also from Mr. Timberlake, and the change orders for the boardwalks. So if there's any other change or future agenda items, Craig?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a quick question on, are we anywhere, with a, joint meeting with the city?
We are waiting to get a financial package put together for the golf course to present, to take to that meeting. We do have one more item at the next meeting, which will be a presentation by the Friends.
Okay. Do we have anything coming on the golf course?
The numbers that Wayne has given us of the golf course are still valid, the golf course itself, and we're working on the clubhouse and trying to establish the type of clubhouse and the value associated with the building.
Okay. The one thing I'm worried about with the golf course is we're kind of making like random decisions kind of here and there rather than having like an end concept that we're kind of working towards. Do you know what I mean? Like when you build the kitchen, you have a vision for the kitchen that everybody's kind of on board with. And everybody sees what the end goal is and what the programs would be and the, you know, food facilities would be and all that kind of stuff. We don't really have that.
I'm not so sure that it's premature. I mean, I think we all want to see that. I want to see a schematic of the golf course and the layout of the golf course, because the structural components like the clubhouse, I know we need to be working on those, but I really want to see us getting a firm number for the construction of the golf course, including the facilities that support that golf course, primarily which would be the restroom and how we're going to handle the pro shop and where that's going to be. The other issues that you didn't mention too is, we know about the abandonment of the extension of Jeffrey. I think that's an important point, as is whether or not we're going to be able to acquire that property in the northeast section of that intersection of single family home, that 1 acre property.
Right.
It'd be nice to have all that wrapped up in a little package, but this is such a big working process, I'm not so sure. I don't want to slow down the construction of the golf course while we work on this other components that can be done in tandem. Art?
Madam Chair, if I may, if you had attended this morning's meeting, which lasted a couple hours, on all of the various items that impact the golf course, such as traffic, such as patterns as to how you go from point A to point B, as to what type of conflicts you may have with utilities when you build a tunnel. Do you use a tunnel instead of a bridge? What type of signalization you may need at the intersection? This is not a simple project where you can take a 24 by 36 inch drawing and just sketch it out and say, here it is.
No, I
These are
understand
very,
that.
very complex issues.
I just feel like we need one kind of brought together vision that we're all working towards, because I
Well,
think.
that's what we are, but you
I
can't,
don't know if
you
my
can't,
vision is the same as.
we won't see that until such time as all the small pieces are put together to make a big picture. It's like doing a puzzle.
But I thought the big picture is kind of done first, and then we all kind of work towards that big picture.
Well, we have
I mean,
to.
and then the specifics are done along the way, obviously.
But there are two major portions of this project. One is the golf course. That has been complete. Wayne is, I think he said 60% complete with all the drawings for the golf course. Second major concept is the clubhouse. Okay. Now, in order to get your big picture, you've got to coordinate the golf course with the clubhouse.
Right.
Where is the pro shop? Is it in the clubhouse? Is it separate? How do you get from the pro shop to where you start to play golf? How do you get from the driving range to the first tee? How do you get from the 18th hole back to your car? Where is the clubhouse? Where is the pro shop? Where are the utilities? What is the safety factors that have to be considered? All of these were discussed today at length, and I would suggest to you but it's probably gonna take another month or so before you have your quote, big picture.
And Wayne is going to have a report, not only with the cost of the golf course, but also the things that, you know, maybe we thought were included with the golf course that aren't. Golf carts, the maintenance equipment, you know, everything else, he's gonna have a report on that for us. And he said within a couple of weeks.
I guess I'm just a little nervous because they've never done a public course before.
No, it's the same, the issues we discussed even before the chairman arrived, with the depth of the lakes. And if you have a deep lake, you have a very wide side slope. Do you have a shallower lake? How are we handling the drainage? The drainage of this project is critical, and that can't be done until 100% of the
I just don't want to
drawings are done.
miss the mark on the community aspect part of this as
Well,
well.
the community aspect is playing golf.
Correct?
Well, there's two parts to it, and I think, I had the pleasure of meeting with both Wayne and Art a couple weeks ago. There's two components to it. One part, I totally agree with what Aaron's saying from if our original thought on this thing was to have something beyond a golf course, a traditional golf course. And Wayne came down and talked about, I'm gonna mess up the name, Galavanas or whatever it is, the restaurant. Guadalajara. So I took the time to go see that place on the way back from a soccer event, yesterday. And it is a very great concept, not sure it is Boca's concept. I mean, it's a very, they talk about the fish, how they get the fish locally, they only get the tomatoes from the local area. They're great concepts, but it is very different than an old Florida golf course. Okay, so there is this theme part that if you want to have something different, you got to think about the disc golf, you got to think about sling golf, all those other concepts that go into golf that will make it, what is going to attract someone to be there other than just a traditional clubhouse and a traditional 18 holes. I think there is opportunity with the short course and with the driving range, and that community, general nature, you need to get some theme around it one way or another. The other component before we can get anywhere in this thing is to really get a solid financial plan, and the National Golf Foundation report was nice, but it totally excluded debt service. I mean, we're looking at a project where we are gonna pay debt service for what we just signed up for 24 million, and we are gonna pay at least 10 million for nothing. So guess what? You better have a plan here with real revenue numbers, best case, worst case, and some options. And to me, and I want to be totally transparent with it, it is my full expectation that the driving range and the short course are lit that night, because that gives you additional playing time. Now, if that's not done, that reduces the revenue. Those things aren't in that foundation report, and I'd rather be transparent with the community and say, look, we paid a lot of money for this thing, and somehow or another we're gonna have to make some compromises, but we're gonna work on it so we build upon the driving range and the short course to the revenue generating. The clubhouse itself, I agree with our conceptually, you have to have that design where it's gonna go, but I'm not sure we can even bite the bullet of paying for that. And so therefore, it's like, it's a placeholder, but they need to know where that placeholder is.
And you have to know what type of clubhouse. Do you want a $20 million clubhouse, or do you want a $700,000 clubhouse?
But I don't wanna pay for it now. That's my thing, is let's get.
Well, you always gotta answer the question. And, those are all issues that have to be considered in the entirety of this project.
Which is why you and Wayne are the right people to guide us through this process.
That's what we're doing.
To do that though, I think just to move us forward is, I think we need to agree and set a date with the city council so that we work towards it. So let's say it's in February, and we try to work on a common date for February. And we say, before we have that date in February, these are the components that we need to have so that Wayne and Art and Susie all have, we can support you to make sure we get there to have those things. And it's gonna be, there's a lot to be done on the whole thing.
Leanne, can you work on that for us? Yes. Everybody in agreement that we do need to have the joint meeting?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They're critical to the funding of this project too.
Is there anything else?
To adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.